I guess the boss says we can start, so I should introduce myself. But before I do that, I want to thank Andy for the professionalism, leadership, and maintenance that the Mitchell County Conservation Commission has done for our environment in Mitchell County. It's through their work that good things happen for people who enjoy the out of doors. So thank you, Andy. And thank you also for the opportunity for me, having enjoyed what you've done my whole life, to have a little bit of return back to the Conservation Commission. It's not only a job, it's a pleasure for me to be here. So thank you, Andy. And it's through this association that Andy and I have had that brings us together tonight with the tree. I'll call it the tree. The Cottonwood Tree is what Andy dreamed of to get this done this evening. So again, thanks for that. As far as myself, born in the metropolis of Carpenter, lived there for the first 22 years of my life, and then off to college after graduating from high school, and majored in art and biology, minor in biology, major in art. And that's the first real formal attraction and education I had in the arts field. In high school, I was probably the unofficial poster maker for all of the dances, athletics, etc., that came through the Carpenter Consolidated School District. And as a result, I knew I kind of liked what I was doing, and that's why I started taking art courses. After graduation from UNI with that major and minor, teachers like, we were talking with this young man who is actually a past student of mine. Teaching back then was kind of like it is today. If you walk into the building and say, I'd like to teach here, they'll say, when can you start? So my wife Carol was teaching in Parkersburg at the time. I was commuting to the UNI from there, and the job opened in Grundy. Great. I'll keep commuting. She can keep her job in Parkersburg, and voila, we'll have a great deal going. Not so. We had to live within the district that we were teaching in, so we had to move to Grundy Center, which has turned out okay. Is that my phone? I'm sorry, forgot to turn it off. Pat, I'll call you back. Another boss. I help paint the football field, and I know he's calling for time tomorrow. Where was I? Oh, so we had to live in the school district, so we moved from Parkersburg to Grundy Center. And that's my whole career. I spent 32 years in the classroom, teaching primarily junior, senior high. I spent a little stint in the elementary classroom, so I had 1 through 12 for a few years, and that put me in the hospital. So we got another teacher, and I just then ended up with junior, senior high. Retired in 1998, if you can believe that. After 32 years, reached IPERS, Social Security, and all that stuff. So after teaching for 32 and coaching, track, basketball, golf, I gave it all up and started producing wildlife art. So that's the story of my professional career. Currently, I have 4 or 5 dozen works in production, and that's how we got the stuff to Andy. I want to give back what I had while I was here, and so I try to do that as much as I can to Mitchell County and other counties that I'm involved with. So the evolvement of a style, I'll say, is the next category. If you can see these two, on the back of it, I wrote, done between 1953 and 1955. I was 11 to 13 years of age, loved the outdoors, hunted ducks whenever I could, maybe got 1 or 2 mallards in those few years. That was the prize. But all of my years growing up, from the time I can remember running along the woods of Deer Creek or the Cedar, I can remember seeing 2 deer. And I would spend sometimes all day smallmouth bass fishing or just hunting squirrels or looking for a mallard. 2 deer. Now, when I bow hunt in the fall, if I don't see 2 deer every hour, it's been a bad day. Last fall, I passed 28 deer before I released an arrow. And that was unheard of back in those days. Anyway, I could talk about that all night, but I better stop there. So those were the things that I did back then. And making it look like it would if you took a picture was my main objective. We've got some photographers in the room that do a great job of that. I've progressed from a artistic production standpoint from trying to do that to many other facets in art. And I want to spend just a little time with that this evening to inform you that there are so many critical things that go into a production of a composition beyond trying to make it look like a picture. So to start with, I went my first years of teaching, and this one. I went to Waldorf Junior College and knew I liked art, knew I liked science, ran into a professor that was just really good, Clayton Gorder. He got me started on a formal basis of art education. But along with that, I had an excellent biology and science department at Waldorf. And one of them in particular was a bow hunter. So he and I hit it off pretty good. And consequently, I took all the art and all the science I could get at Waldorf. Moving from there, however, that was only a 2-year school at that time, so I went on to end up at the University of Northern Iowa. And while I was there, I discovered that there was more to art than making pictures. There's all of the, if you're going to become a teacher, there's classroom management, first of all. How are you going to keep control of 15 to 30 kids in one little room? You got to have all kinds of techniques to take care of that. But also beyond that, you have the learning of the art elements, the art principles, the art media, the art history, the art management, the art movements, the art. So all of the art classes that I took dealt with techniques and media and all the stuff that goes along with that job. As a result, I also learned from art history that it isn't just picture making, it's developing compositions without a subject matter, without a realistic picture. And that's where the elements, the principles of design come into play. How can you make something interesting to people where they don't see a subject? Well, it's all of these things that go into composition that are involved with that. So I started doing with my art, and at that time it was all about painting. As you can see, this is not a colored pencil thing. But it's still, if you kind of read into this, it still deals with kind of the natural, the world and nature. I think you could see there, that's some kind of a botanical form that's there. But there's also other things that come into it that hopefully make it interesting for you to look at. This, I like to say, without the subject, this is complex in its simplicity, or simple in its complexity. If that makes any sense, that's how I look at it. I look at it with what kind of line is there? What kind of shape is there? What kind of form is there? Is there texture there? What about the color? All of those things enter into it as you're in the process of developing the composition. It may look like a fish, it may look like a bird, but that's not the primary reason. It's to develop the composition that hopefully will attract the eye of the observer and make it interesting to look at. So that's kind of a synopsis of abstract expressionism or non-objective art. Some of these that I was just talking about back in those days when I was finishing up undergraduate and getting into the graduate program, that's a small one. I didn't bring the truck tonight. I brought the Passat VW, so I didn't have room. Well, I guess I've given most of those away to our kids, but some of those were 6 feet. So you're using, instead of a colored pencil to make these kinds of marks, you're using a brush to make these kinds of marks. Slash and smear, as some people say. That's what you do with that. So I learned a lot in those classes about how to compose things from a design standpoint rather than a photographic standpoint. Neither one are good or bad. They're just different ways of approaching it. My best teacher was the last professor I had. What I claim is my best teacher was the last professor I had in the painting studio. His name was John Brown. At that point, I had more formal education than he did. All he had was a bachelor's degree. I was on the last semester of a graduate program. But he was the best man I ever had as far as helping you to understand what you were doing. He always said, paint how you want, but however you paint, be honest with yourself. And that really struck me because I was doing all of this non-objective art, and at heart, I was a man in love with nature. So that's when I started transferring back to realism. And a fellow by the name of Pablo Picasso also sticks in my mind. We see it on the screen behind the altar at church every Sunday when the offering is taken. On the screen comes a quotation from Pablo. The meaning of life is to find your gifts. The meaning of life is to find your gifts. The purpose of life is to give them away. Think about that. Sure, fundamentally, tossing a few bucks in the collection plate on Sunday makes pretty good sense. But think about everything else that concerns you as a person, a personality, how you think, how you deal with things. They're all gifts from someone above. How you deal with them is your purpose. How you give them away is your purpose. So that's my whole kind of philosophy in itself. Then after retirement, I started dealing with dry media rather than paint. Really no education in that at all, except talking with a few other artists around the Midwest that dealt with it. And I always say, kind of like my statement here, with beauty and nature, I found my niche, so to speak, in dealing with nature, but also with colored pencils. Because of their innate characteristics, I prefer colored pencils as a media because of the ability to do detailed work. You got to have that. Again, photographers, you know that you've got to be able to see things. With this, you've got to see things. I often say, yes, I can deal with details very well with colored pencils, but sometimes that becomes my crutch also. I get too wrapped up in details and it doesn't work as well as just producing the form itself. So instead of a slash and smear, this is my total toolbox. Everything I do comes out of this plastic tub. With the exception maybe, I didn't bring any along tonight, but with the exception of maybe a few details once in a while with some acrylic paint to touch in. I think Andy's got a small work of mourning doves back there. The branches have snow on. The branches and the snow, or not the branches, but the snow on the branches has been done with acrylic paint. The rest of it's all colored pencil. So anyway, on that transition from paint to colored pencil, do the first one in, yeah. Oh, this one. That right there is the last real production in painting that I did, and that was 1985. I don't know, Corey may still have been in school at that time. He remembered it, okay. That was a challenge by maybe one of his classmates. We had, I say to this day, I was blessed with some of the best students that I think I could have had. And one, we were painting one day and he said, "When do we get to use the good stuff?" I said, "This is the best I can buy. Why?" He said, "Well, it isn't what you use." I said, "Well, yeah, it is. Same brand." He said something else, and I finally figured out we were using tempera, and he wanted to go to oil or acrylics. Oh, fine, we can do that. But I said, it isn't the media, it's who's using the media that's important. So he challenged me. He said, "Mr. Gordon, I want you to draw something and paint it with the paint I'm using to see how you can do." So he was quite a hunter also himself. That's why we had a fairly good relationship, I felt. So I just grabbed a piece of poster board and I drew that pheasant's head on it and painted it with the paint off his palette. "Oh," he said, "I guess you're right. You can do something with this paint." But then we moved on to acrylics and oils too. I think maybe acrylics because we'd kind of put oils aside by that time. So that's how that all transpired. And you know, moving back to the realism and from paint to colored pencil, first of all, the move from abstraction to realism is kind of an enigma in itself. You think abstraction is easy because you don't have to make it look like anything. You can just, like I say, slop and smear. But there's all of these elements, all of this composition that goes into that make it more difficult because you can't make it look like something recognizable. You have to make it good art without that. The opposite is also true. With realism, you don't have to search for a subject. You've already chosen what it's going to look like before you start. It's just a matter of executing that. So that's all in the complexity of art production. And I had to run that by. I got a little more wordy than what I'd practiced earlier today, but that's what it's about. And those of you who are in production of art know that that kind of thing happens. In abstraction, the subject becomes that. That is the object. That is the subject. That is the communication between you and what is visible. With realism, or like the pheasant, that is easy to get what it is, but it's also difficult to make it look like the pheasant, like the duck, like the deer, that people will enjoy and hopefully purchase as someone who is in the production. So that's where all of that exists with me. And whether it's this one and that one, whether it's colored pencil or whether it's also graphite, it's all the same in the realism. And that's basically all I deal with now, is colored pencil and pencil, or graphite as we know it. And as you can see, it's pretty easy for me to get too wrapped up in details. A lot of art is pretty simplistic. Mine isn't. It's very complex. So that's where I'm standing with everything right now. How I evolve from here, I don't know. Sometimes something just turns a light bulb on and you start doing things that you didn't realize you had a desire to do. Other times you plan on it. You plan on doing this. So where I go from here with my art, I don't know. And where I've come from in about the last 70 years, this is 70 years ago, to where the last one is either the brook trout or the smallmouth bass in graphite. That's how I've evolved as a person, as an artist. My challenge to you, if you're in production, is to see where you go and always think about progressing. Always think about, what did that artist do 100 years ago? What did that artist do 500 years ago? I'm not a Larry Zach, but Larry Zach is one of my heroes. And I admire him for what he has progressed to. I'll stop there and get to the reason we're here tonight. As I said, Andy and I have developed a relationship over the last, 2-3 years. And I thank him for what he's done, what he's doing, what he continues to do. And he informed me of this tree he's got in Mitchell County. Biggest cottonwood tree, according to the State Department, in the whole state. So we came up and looked at it. Yeah, that's pretty big. I stand in front of it like this, and there's somewhere between a foot and a half more tree out both fingertips. And I can reach just about 6 feet here. So we're looking at about 9 feet across. A big tree. Correct me if I'm wrong, the circumference of that tree is 29 feet and 10 inches. Yeah, that is a big tree. So this happened about a year ago, and now as we travel, my wife and I, sorry, I forgot to introduce my wife, Carol. As we travel around the state, she accuses me of not staying on the road because I'm looking lots of times at deer or pheasants or whatever, but now I've also started looking at all the cottonwoods that are growing around the state. There are some big ones, but I don't think I have found one as big as we have here in Mitchell County, except today, I think north of Rudd, coming up the blacktop because of the detour on 14. There's one up back in a little waterway that looked pretty good sized. However, it has to be a singular trunk at the height of 4 feet. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. And many of the trees that look big are multiple trunks. Otranto's, I call it Otranto's cottonwood, is a singular trunk, and it measures that 29 feet something. So again, it's a big tree. Upon talking with Andy and thinking about it, yeah, I want to do that. I want to do an image of that. So to make it look like the tree, like it is recognizable in the print, like it is in real life, I have to have some pictures of it to know what it is. So Carol, who's a much better photographer and has a better camera than I have, we came up and found the tree, and I don't know how many pictures she took, but she walked around it and has several on her phone and camera. And as I looked at it and was considering how to do it, what size and so forth, I decided that I think I'm going to do it in graphite, monotone, black and white. That would keep any of the other art elements, art principles from interfering with the magnitude of this tree. You wouldn't get caught up in the color of it. Or was it spring when the leaves are nice and bright green, late summer, fall, or winter? Because of the color, I decided that graphite might be the best and less complex. You can see some of the designs I have are extremely complex. I kept this one pretty much void of other environmental parts. This one I think is a good one to use as an example. This picture is about a smallmouth bass trying to grab a crab. It's called standoff. But there's more to it than that. It is about what draws your eye to that area of the composition. How you position the trees, how you position the invisible eye line between the crab and the tree. They're facing each other, looking right at them. That makes you look back and forth between the two. The branches here, not because that's the way it was, but the branches here to kind of encompass that area and lead you to the crab. These areas over here, the tail is that way to wrap you back around this way. They aren't quite as realistic down here, but those limbs are also designed to pull you back in. So all of those things deal with composition. And I wanted the composition of the tree to be more simplistic, so the tree would be the only thing that people would really want to see. Maybe we should get that out now. So I did it. about the size of some of these middle-sized ones, and got it done, and I thought, it's lacking something. The tree, as big, as monumental as it is, was just a tree on a piece of mat board, a drawing board. I got to do something to help the size, the magnitude of that. And it sits there along the roadside north of Otranto, and you can see it right from the road. I mean, it's less than from here to the wall away from you. What else to combine it with? I didn't want all that other stuff in the composition, so I wanted to keep it simple and still try to show some size. So that's when I decided it wasn't there, or I couldn't see it anyway. There's an old barbed wire fence behind it. The tree is like this big, and the metal posts of the barbed wire fence are like this big. That helps the magnitude, the size of the tree. That helps some. But my wife, with a picture of me standing in that tree, really shows it. But I didn't want a picture of myself in there. So I decided, hey, I'm a deer hunter. We can put a deer in there. And so I put that doe standing in the road, also helping to show how big it is. The actual image is not from the road. The main structure of the tree is what you see from the road. But with my wife's pictures, walking all the way around it, taking, I don't know, 12 or 15 pictures maybe, I used some of the stuff on the backside from the image you're looking at it, just to make the composition more complete. The tree was kind of void of branches and leaves on the right side as you look at it. So I used some of the branches from the backside, cut them off and moved them around to the front to make it look a little more balanced as far as, again, art principles. And as a result, it's not exactly as a realistic photograph would have been. So in conclusion for this, I hope that the color absence does not bother you. I hope that the simplicity of the design helps to see the magnitude of the tree. There are farmsteads, there's a, I don't know what you call these huge highline wires. You can see that, it's right beside the tree. I left that out. And hopefully the deer and the fence offer an emphasis to the size of it all. Absence of background, absence of secondary subjects other than the fence and the tree, hopefully emphasize everything that I wanted to accomplish with it. So with that, again, thank you, Andy, for the opportunity to show a little bit of what I've done, a little bit of, or not a little bit, a lot of my background, more than I was thinking I would tell you, but also for the efforts of the conservation commissions throughout the state for the work that they do to improve and maintain our natural environment. I really, really appreciate it. And in conclusion, I'll look at Deb because they're having an art fest the 21st of September, during which Deb, Andy, and I have decided we'll sell some of these. We have 70 or so prints. I don't know how many you have left, but 70 or so prints. We'll sell them there. All the proceeds will go to the Conservation Commission here in Mitchell County. So come one, come all, buy lots of them to increase their budget. I'll also have more of my stuff there, which starving artists always can use another dime or dollar, you know. So I'll have some of that there also. If you want to see some, Andy's got a pretty good array of most of my stuff back there. So yes, with that, I'll answer any questions you have.
I want to know how you got to the tree, because the ditch is really steep.
I'm sorry, I've got to listen more carefully.
I want to know how you got to the tree.
How I got to it?
Yes.
Drove.
No, but you go on the road and you cannot, the ditch is really steep and...
Yes. I thought about that, Andy. I didn't mention it to you yet. When we went there, for some reason, I was able to get across the deep ditch. Or maybe my wife did too, because you took pictures of all sides. Or did I take those pictures? Anyway, you can see some of those. She's got it on her camera if you want to tonight. Yeah, we got out there into the farm field and walked around it. But we were up there 2 weeks ago. We had some friends that heard about it and wanted to see it. And we were celebrating something else I won't even go into. It's called, I'll just mention it, 60 years of married life. So we were celebrating that with some friends, and they wanted to see that tree. So we drove up there, and yeah, we tried to get through the ditch, and I was afraid of falling into the mud in the bottom, so we didn't go around it. But on the south side of it, a limb has been torn off, blown off, and there's a big hole there, big cavity. And she's got one picture or two pictures maybe of me standing beside that cavity. I could have crawled into that, I think. I'm not a big person, but I'm not skinny or little either. And I think I could have gotten into it. A little bit afraid I might not have been able to get out. But yeah, it's big. Any other questions? I'd be happy to. Yes?
How long did it take you?
I think I ought to put that on everything I do, because there isn't a show I go to or a talk I give that I don't get that question. I say I don't keep track because it's scary. Again, the preciseness and the size of these is a magnitude above what it would be to do a painting like that big one you see. However, I always say I've got a series of fish, flowers, what else, Carol? Fish and flowers and birds. Those are my three main subjects that I deal with. And I always say something this size with this kind of a composition, a complexity of composition and detail, I don't put a watch to it, but it's somewhere around 100 hours for something like this. The big painting, abstract painting, was done the last semester of graduate school. And I was just fooling around. I've got 5 or 6 of them similar to that, working off the same palette, either on a table or on the floor, just slashing them. And they looked okay. I didn't throw them away. And they're on brown wrapping paper. You can see brown wrapping paper there, because I was just fooling around. And I kept them for some reason. And I think it was like 2021. Yes, 2021. I got some of them out and I looked at this one. So a lot of the little, here we go again with detail. A lot of these little details were done 2 years ago. Whereas this major part of it was done in about 1976, my last semester of graduate school. And I just looked at it and thought, hey, I can do a little with that. So just yesterday when I was preparing this, I looked at the others I've got. Same kind of design on it. Maybe I ought to get the paint out and fiddle with that a little bit. But long answer to a short question, yeah. Lots of detail, lots of hours. Small things. The tree itself, probably, it's easier than abstraction because you can get what you want easily without fiddling and working with design and composition. Probably 20 to 40 hours, maybe. That's just a ballpark figure. Anything else? Yes?
Did you purchase before the 21st?
Again, I got a,
Oh, okay.
I had two questions.
What brand of colored pencils do you use?
Crayola, primarily. Prismacolor, Crayola.
Crayola? Okay.
Yeah. There's all kinds of colored pencils. I guess I shouldn't have said Crayola because Prismacolor is,
Before, but I've never asked you what you use.
yeah, Prismacolor has 4 different models.
Yeah, they do.
One that looks about like a number 2 pencil is what they call the fine line or thin line, I think, very thin. And it's the hardest of all of them. The other one is what they call their Premier. It looks like a regular drawing pencil if you're familiar with the size of those. Color compatible. I mean, if you've got a white in this, your white in your very thin is very much the same. Same way with all of the colors. Those are the primary 2 that I use. There's also one that's called Color Sticks, water soluble.
Oh, yeah, I got it.
It's about the same as the Premier in size and hardness of lead, but it's water soluble. You can use that by just dipping the lead or the color into water and putting it down, and then it'll kind of spread. Or you can wet your surface and then it'll also spread. Becomes like a watercolor in essence. Or what I also do, I wish I'd have brought it along. I might have one back in Andy's collection there where I've had it all done in dry media, and I took a dark blue and it was a sky image, and I just touched it to give it kind of a speckled look. So, and I haven't done a lot with the water soluble simply because if I want to do that, I go to paint. It's quicker. Then there's a 4th one too. I don't have any of them with me, but they're like, if you're familiar with pastels and chalk, they're not encapsulated in wood. They are just like a pastel, only when you touch it and feel it, you know that it's not chalk. It's got kind of a tacky feel like the other 3 do. So that's what I use, almost 99%.
What surface do you use when you use colored pencils? What surface do you usually use?
Most all of my stuff I purchased at Hobby Lobby.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Drawing boards. I try to get the whitest I can find,
Okay.
and the smoothest I can find that still picks up the pigment.
Okay.
Sometimes you can get stuff that's a little too slick,
Yes.
and it won't work with these very well. I've never tried rice paper or anything of that nature.
Pastel matte. I use pastel matte.
I've used it in the past.
Yeah, that's what I use.
Oh, okay, okay. And that's, yeah,
Yeah,
that's all right.
well, whatever works for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
You forgot to tell them about that other device that you have in your box that you show to children and how magic it is.
Eraser.
How magic it is.
How magic it is.
I don't know what you talk. What did I? Well, I've got my expert here, so.
It's a little device that has a little motor in it.
I was thinking, I was thinking Prismacolors. Yes. I've got a magic utensil. And it's really magic because it just sits here unless you tip it. And then it runs. But it also helps if you push that little button on top. Yeah, removal, electric erasers are great for highlighting. And you can probably see, especially on some of the fish, I've got two models of that too. This one's for details, smaller eraser. For an example, if you can look at this brook trout, the sun images on its back, or the images on the rocks. Oh.
I guess I won't go out quietly. My toe was asleep.
The pigment was picked off those areas where you have sun reflections with the erasers. Sorry, Carol, I didn't follow your reasoning there. Any other questions? Yes?
Usually, like for your prints, do you usually work much larger than that, or is that about the size the original is?
Most of my series in birds, fish, and flowers are somewhere in the foot to 18-inch configuration, not always, or very seldom square, but that size, again, because of the time element. I do have one that I did for the Ducks Unlimited competition. That's maybe 2 by 3 feet. That's the largest I've ever done with colored pencil. But go back to the abstract painting, and it's, you can't get them in a car. Oh. But that's just, you know, that's what I do. It's that gift. I can't claim it because I didn't go out and buy it. It was given to me. And I'm a definite right brain person, if any of you are familiar with left and right side brain. Give me numbers and I got to sit there and figure them all, or count them on my hands, you know. But is there a different way to do this activity or that job? Usually it comes easy because nonconformity is one of the, what shall I say, one of the things about right brain people. And I'm also left-handed. That's the extent of me. If there are more questions, I'll answer them. You're welcome. I hope, Andy, to go back and look at things back there. You can come and look at these closer. I have a little statement of philosophy up here you're welcome to take. It's not quite up to date. We moved, got behind in our what shall I say, the domain, what do you call that?
Website.
Yeah,
Website.
the website you got to pay for every month. Ooh, we missed one and someone stole it. So my handle was Artist by Nature. We couldn't buy it back. The guy that got it wouldn't sell it back to us. So in lieu of court battles, we said, okay, it's now Artist of Nature. Then that's legal. But I'm going to have to buy a new sign or whatever. And on here, I think it's also, no, I don't even have it on here. And business cards you're welcome to, and that's got it changed, Artist of Nature. We just got those turned in. Website, if you want to look that up. Our granddaughter, who's now a student at UNI, is in interior design, and she designed our website, new website, because the old one was gone. She's done a terrific job, so if you want to look that up. That's at the bottom, but Artist of Nature, not by. And that's at the bottom of this in the white space too. Anything else? Thank you. Thank you.